Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
What do the faces of the people running in the midterms tell us? Well, Republicans and Democrats, they got issues. We're going to talk about those issues, specifically what problems the GOP faces in the long term and what the Democrats face in the short term. So we'll be looking to break that down a little bit and discuss, of course, tomorrow's election, but really the broader context of what the parties have to do to survive and to ultimately thrive. But of course, we couldn't begin a conversation on politics, which I'm sure will include some history references, without
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
I think what they have to do is get more votes, right? Than the other side?
Generally.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are the rules, right?
Figure out the strategy to get more votes.
Yeah. That is the thinking. So
that's
we'll talk
the
about that
historical
strategy.
perspective.
The historical,
yeah.
That's how it usually works?
Generally.
Okay.
Yeah, not always.
Okay.
I know it doesn't always work that way because you remind me of the 3 or 4 times it hasn't. But
yes. Typically,
yes.
The people that get the most vote win. Typically. So we'll start, Lance, with why do you care? You want to tell us or you want me to tell us?
Why do we care?
Yeah. Why do we care about the Democrats and Republicans and their short-term and long-term problems?
Well, because it is going to affect your future and my future.
Okay. So if you're a Democrat or a Republican, or if you...
I mean, either way, the stock market's either going to do well and I can stay retired, or the stock market's going to crash at the time when I need money and I'm going to have to end retirement and go back to work. If you're a young person, you may be looking at making a big move, and depending on the fate of the economy or the job market or oil prices, you may or may not be able to do that. So wherever you're coming from, old, young, middle-aged, whoever gets control and how they decide to go about getting it is going to play a direct effect on your short-term and long-term future.
Excellent.
If you have one.
Perfect. That was about, well, I think everybody listening has at least a short-term future.
You would think. I mean, I've got at least till now because I'm still
right.
here.
That's right. At least
if I flop right now, okay, but I had a short-term future.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll talk about Democrats first because, I think our episode where we talked about what's going to happen to the Democrats, did pretty well. I think people liked to hear you and I talk a little smack about those Democrats. So we'll start with them. That's fine. Keep those right-leaners in line here. So what kind of Democrat can beat Trump? Well, it's a great question, and it was one posed in the Sunday, November 4th, New York Times. This article caught Lance's attention, and he said, hey, you need to take a look at this. I think this is kind of interesting. So the midterms will answer some questions, but not the biggest one of all. A moderate or a progressive, an old-timer or a newcomer, a woman or a man. That part of the drill is familiar, but it will have an unfamiliar urgency because Trump ratchets up everything, especially the stakes. So O'Rourke told me, meaning most Democrats, Eric Holder, what he said, that's not where we're at. He added that among American voters, there is a real concern about civility, not for the sake of manners, but for the sake of the country working.
That's Beto O'Rourke, who's running for the Senate seat in Texas, when asked, should we get down and dirty in the muck with President Trump as far as the Democrats?
Yep.
And he's saying, no, we should stay above it.
And then
and offer a choice.
Right. Continuing on from there, the former senator and former Nebraska governor said, quote, you have to say to the audience, this country is dangerously divided and it's on the edge of something awful. And so now
I agree with both of those, but I'm not sure that's the way to win.
Right. There's a difference.
And I really do. I would like to think that Democrats could stay above the name calling and the finger pointing and all of that kind of stuff. and point out to people that, because I agree that I mean, I've said that before in the last couple of weeks on this show, that I think we're at a precipice with bad feelings towards one another in this country. And I think the current president, good, bad, or indifferent as far as, you know, the economy and border and all, is precipitating that the bad feelings among the electorate the wedge is being driven by the president. So I would like to say that the Democrats could talk peace and kumbaya and we all need to get along and positive race relations and religion and quote the Constitution in such a manner that everybody felt like they played a role or a part here in the United States of America. But I don't know if that will defeat the rhetoric that is coming from the president and then being supported pretty much en masse by the Republican Party power brokers. Mm-hmm. I mean, be it Lindsey Graham or whomever, you know, I mean, the best the Republicans can do if they don't like what President Trump is saying is, well, I'm not going to run for re-election this year.
Right. That's the best they got.
That's the best they're doing, you know? Yep. So I know I am worried about this general mood of the population towards one another, but I'm not sure that Mr. O'Rourke, as much as I would
like to think that he's on.
Well, and I like what he says and I like his energy. And he was on this morning telling children, high school kids and college kids, don't go back to school. You need to spend the rest of the day, today and tomorrow, getting your friends to the voting booths. That's more important right now because this will end Tuesday night and you can always go back to school on Wednesday and catch up on the things that you're going to miss in class. Mm-hmm. And the announcer said, oh, I bet there are teachers all over Texas that are mad at Beto O'Rourke. And I'm thinking, no, if I was a civics teacher, it's exactly what I'd be telling my students, that the future of the country depends on what's going to happen in the next 36 hours. So get out there and make a difference while you can, because you can make up your work once you get back.
Yep.
So I like what he says, but I don't know if that will work. Sorry, I kind of ranted there. But
no, you're good.
I'm really in a quandary.
Yeah. That's probably why this got your attention,
I
right?
don't like what the Democratic leaders are saying. I listened to the head of the DNC last night, and lucky I didn't have anything in my hand that would break my TV set, because he was telling me everything's hunky-dory within the Democratic Party, and they're doing everything exactly the way they should do. And I'm like, that's why the Democrats are not going to be successful.
That's why we're going to lose.
Is because you're in charge
people
and
like
you think we're doing wonderful
like
things right now. We being the Democrats.
Boy. So the author,
sorry, what else do we have here?
The author says, but for starters, Trump's Democratic opponent must emerge. I think that's so good. And that will be tricky in a field of prospective candidates that's about 36 people large at present. If Democrats are going to win in 2020, it can't be with careless presumption that everyone who voted for Trump is a toothless, ignorant racist. Obviously the paralysis on Capitol Hill viewed Trump as the kick in the ass that Washington needed. That's why a lot of people voted for him. There has to be room for these voters. But if they're shunned and belittled for having supported him in the first place, they will just be driven further into his column. There's less to defend and explain. Obama, he noted, wasn't even midway through his first term in the Senate when he announced his presidential bid. And this is speaking to the idea that experience should lend itself to your prose. And in reality, what a lot of history tells us is it's the opposite. You go back to Ronald Reagan, right? I mean, and in recent history, Obama. I mean, he was only first way through his half Senate term. And before that, nothing notable that counted toward his political, his political track record, so to speak.
Why don't, not to throw you way off base, why don't the Democrats just admit that Hillary was a piss poor candidate?
I don't know. Because
we could have run a rocking chair and beaten Donald Trump. We ran the worst possible candidate we could run out of, quote, loyalty. For what? Loyal to her husband for standing by him when he committed lewd, and
that goes back to the whole power structure, right? I mean, this notion that for some reason the Clintons still had any say
because,
in the way the Democratic Party is run.
Barack Obama was a more popular candidate than her, and she lost fair and square.
Right.
It was almost like, well, she's waited and we have to get, hey, you know what? If your time has passed and you got so much baggage, then it wasn't your time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know.
And it may never have been your time.
You know what I'm saying? Because it was almost like, well, once you're in, the only one to take her on was the outsider, Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Who's this old guy, who had some ideas. But you don't mean to tell me, and I know hindsight's 20/20, if Joe Biden, as President Obama's vice president, would have run for the nomination and it been a fair race among the Democrats, you don't think Biden would have beaten Trump? You don't think Biden has the personality and the intelligence and the wherewithal?
Yep.
And would have made a fantastic president? And look what he's done for the Democratic Party. I just really think the biggest thing that whole article, and I know we're just going through it right now, didn't point out is that the Democrats chose the wrong person to run against Donald Trump in 2016. And no Democrat wants to mention that. And I don't understand why not, because the Clintons can't hurt you now.
Right. What are they going to do?
In the day of the Me Too stuff, and I'm the one who says, who a president sleeps with or whatever shouldn't matter. How do they run the country?
But the reality is it does at the moment.
Well, at the moment it does. So the Clintons aren't power brokers within the Democratic Party.
We just saw that the other day, right? Nobody wants Bill Clinton to
Bill can't show up at any campaign events.
Yeah.
Even though he's probably the most popular Democrat in America with a group over 40, 50. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a good aside on obviously the candidate matters a lot. And I think part of what this article is getting at is you have to have somebody that can emerge. And Hillary Clinton was not someone who could emerge. Everything that she had to share was things that we already knew. And for me and others, that may have been a positive. But for most people, it's not. There's nothing new. There's nothing exciting. We know everything already. We know you're experienced, right? We know all that. We don't care.
And you have too much baggage.
Yeah. And you're too experienced. I mean, that's the other side of this, right?
So long,
which is kind of nuts.
There are things that the other side can bring up that are negative.
Yep.
Whereas President Obama, as the article stated, wasn't a senator that long when he announced his to run. There wasn't that much history to get him on.
There wasn't a lot. He hadn't spent nearly as long in public life. So just by nature of, doesn't mean there isn't stuff there. It just means that stuff wasn't part of the public eye. So, So anyway, we just talked about Obama there. He reminded me of how much traction Trump got by portraying himself as an outsider to Washington. A Democratic nominee who's a governor, mayor, or business owner may be the way to seize that mantle. What came through most clearly in talking with him and with others, and what I've come to believe more firmly, is that if you want to beat Trump, learn from him. Heed his smartest strategic decisions. Acknowledge and incorporate a few of the qualities that admirers attribute to him and were attracted by. Be direct, blunt, and consistent. He has the same message today that he did the day he came down the elevator at Trump Tower. The message discipline is incredible. He has never wavered. It's very real and very powerful. The American people like a fighter. Donald Trump proved that. Plant yourself in the Rust Belt. I've given this advice to 2 or 3 people who've thought about running. Don't think about anything other than what you're going to say in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Why should people who hunt, fish, and go to church trust you? What is your answer to globalism? And the last part here is, I think, of the whole thing, perhaps my favorite part. Too many Democrats spend too much time trumpeting Clinton's popular vote victory, blaming the Russians, or combing the shadows for anything that absolves them of error. They dismiss Trump as an accident, a freak, or a fad. It's consoling, sure. it's also an invitation to his next inauguration. And that's, I don't know how else we say it, guys. I mean, at some point it has to end. Well, we didn't, because I think that's the feeling at the DNC headquarters. It's this false belief that they all keep telling each other. And there's got to be a voice in the back of their head saying it just ain't true, that they didn't do anything wrong. They did. They lost. Mm-hmm. So you did something wrong. Mm-hmm. It can't just be, well, the other side was just better. That's just what it was, Well, or that the Russians or that I mean, again, it doesn't mean that those things didn't play into it, but that's like saying, well, we lost the game, but there was nothing that we could have done any better to have won. And in this case, that's just not the truth. They made big mistakes, especially not only did you have a candidate that in this election of all elections was the wrong candidate. On top of that, you didn't even send that candidate to some of your core states because you thought you had them in the bag. And guess what? They felt left out. And when people feel left out, sometimes they go the other way just to spite you, not even because they like the other side, just because you left them out in the cold.
I mean, you lost with the economy high, no war. You did something wrong.
Yeah.
Popular president.
It doesn't matter who you're running
against. Healthcare.
I
I mean, what's the biggest issue 2 years later? Healthcare, pre-existing conditions. You already had that taken care of. Were you promoting that and talking about that in 2016, 2015, and 2016? No. You weren't talking about, hey, if the Republic, were you talking about Supreme Court justices? You look at, women's rights and Roe v. Wade and all this concern now. Were you speaking to those things in 2015 and 2016? No. Everything that people were upset about were the issues or happy about. I mean, 68%, I saw this last night, 68% of Americans in a poll by, I think it was Siena College in New York, are satisfied with the economy. Neither party's running about the economy. I mean, that's where I think Trump is really messing up, to just bash on the Republicans a little bit. You've got 70%, 7 out of 10 Americans, and I don't know why they are, because I'm concerned about the economy, but 70% of the American public are great with the economy, and the Republicans aren't even running on how great the economy is.
Yep.
We gave you a tax cut. Nobody's running on the tax cut.
Couldn't the campaign message for Hillary Clinton been as simple as, the economy is on an upward trend. If you want it to continue, elect me. Again, regardless of whether or not there's a lot of truth to the president in power can influence the economy, you run on that, because what do we know? The economy has continued the trend that started during Obama. And you could have at least run on, if you elect us, the economy will keep getting better.
And do you like the fact that more people now have health care in America, and that your health care is safe and protected?
Yep.
Yes, it's going up, but if you vote us in, we will continue to make improvements to it and try to cut costs.
We'll make these things better.
But if you vote us out,
they'll get worse, or they'll go away.
You're going to lose your health care that you just got in the last 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. There were so many opportunities that weren't taken. It's like, we're running against Trump, we're going to win.
Yeah. It's just missed
you
left and right.
You never take your opponent lightly.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give them credit.
Because that's when you lose.
And that's what happened. But nowhere in that is that addressed.
Yep.
Yep.
So and part of the reason we say this is a short-term issue for Democrats is obviously tomorrow's election day. And then again, 2020, when we're talking about for the presidency, it's a short-term problem. The reason I don't think the Democrats have as much of a long-term problem is because of what we're about to discuss with the Republicans. And I think that that'll kind of help tie it together. I think that despite the shortcomings of the Democrats right now, the leadership will change, right? The guard will change out. And eventually you'll get somebody there who realizes they have to wake up and have a real live action plan for America. You hope.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like the biggest thing. And you got to have a candidate who, I'm sorry, but has a little bit of pizzazz to him, I mean, they don't even have to have a lot. Like you said with Joe Biden, they don't have to be the sexiest, youngest, whatever. They don't have to be that. They just have to have some personality, and they've got to have a little bit of showmanship because you're running against a showman, and anybody you put up against him is going to seem bland. So, and that's, again, that goes back to like what you were saying about the candidates. In other election years, if Hillary had been running against somebody who had a lot of experience like her, it might not have been as hard because she wouldn't have seemed as boring. But when you run her against somebody like Trump, she seems boring, really boring, because she's a policy wonk and he's, TV personality. And I'm sorry, but if you put somebody who's a policy wonk next to a TV personality, even if they're not boring, they're going to seem super boring because they just don't, that's not their skill set. So you gotta know, like you said, you gotta not disrespect the competition and not keep in mind what their strengths are. And their strengths are showmanship, especially now. So Lance, before we get into the Republicans and what's going on there, what are we doing here? What are we after on TrueChat? What are we trying to accomplish?
Oh, well, you mean our mission statement?
Yeah, you got a new poster.
I got a poster here I can read. It says that TrueChat's mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice green sign there with the little blue tents.
Yeah.
Our company's colors.
Uh-huh. You like it?
Little matte finish.
Gradient. Uh-huh. Yeah. Why has it got a matte finish?
Because the old guy's eyes aren't as good, and you should get these lights in here shining on it, and all of a sudden I can't read it.
Gotcha.
And you want me to read it. I mean, I got candy
reflective.
and water today, so I got a raise, so now I have to read the mission statement.
Positive reinforcement. Yeah. Okay. So if you have any ethical concerns, which means that you think we're not upholding that mission statement today, please email ethics@truechat.org, ethics@truechat.org. Of course, we want your thoughts. What other problems do the Democrats face? Are we spot on? Let us know at TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere, right? Social media. Let us know. Let us know your thoughts. And getting back to it here, Republicans, they got some long-term problems, Lance. That's my opinion anyway. We'll talk about why I think this is. So their short-term problems, well, they don't have as many of those. As long as they're willing to bow down to Trump, which I don't know about you, but they seem to be willing to do. I mean, on the average, most of them seem willing to all hail Trump. Trump is the best. Even though we didn't say that like right before he got elected, we called him a pig and all kinds of terrible things. But hey, he's the best now.
But he has support and he's keeping us in power and we're getting to pass the laws that we want to pass.
So
and
all hail Trump.
We're getting to get control of the Supreme Court. They're getting what they want, whether they agree with him or not. So as long as they're going to get what they want out of it, they're going to support him.
As long as Trump's around.
If things go badly, then they're going to just start jumping on. That's just the way politics are.
And their enemy doesn't have a plan.
I mean, that's not because they're the Republicans.
Yeah.
If things are going well, then either party's going to support that person. Until things go badly, then they're all going to jump off the bandwagon and point fingers at them.
Jump ship. Yep. Oh, it wasn't us. It wasn't us. It was him. It was him. Yeah. So, well, and also, right.
It's, them, whatever.
It's easy to win the game if your opponent's not playing. Or if they're standing out of bounds, thinking they're part of the game, and they're just kind of.
But we're looking at a possible midterm where the seated president may not lose power.
Yep.
I mean, most likely, the law of averages says it's going to be a split.
Right.
But there's still an outside way, according to the numbers, that the Republicans could control. Congress.
Keep control again. Yeah. Well, and even if they only lose one house,
if that happens, look out for what the Republicans are going to do in the second half of the president's term. If with all of this so-called negative press, the Republicans somehow keep both houses of Congress.
Yep.
Wow.
It'll be interesting. So that's why I'm contending here that ultimately, right, both sides have short and long-term problems. I'm not saying that it's only short-term problems for the Democrats and only long-term problems for the Republicans. The point of this episode is to talk about the biggest issues they face, and the biggest issues for the Democrats are short-term, and the long-term is mainly GOP focused, and here's why. Again, from the New York Times, November 4th, The percentage of candidates who are white men is the lowest it's been in the last 4 elections, according to data available to the Times. There are more new faces than incumbents in this diverse cohort of candidates. More than a quarter of all candidates running this year are female, including 84 women of color, a 42% increase from just 2 years ago. There are at least 215 candidates of color and a record 26 openly LGBT candidates, more than 5 times the number in 2010. The point here is there's this nice visual. I encourage you guys to look up this article. It's entitled The Faces of Change in the Midterm Elections. So Google that, the New York Times. There's a nice graphic that shows the Republicans, white men versus all others. Okay, straight white men. It actually that's the one shortfall, there we go, of the graph is that it says white men and it should say straight white men because the other category includes white males who are in the LGBT community. And they're still white men.
Yeah, they are.
That just because you're part of the LGBT community doesn't make you
take
white.
away white. It take away the fact that you are a male.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, if you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because you can be of a different
still
skin color and of a different sex and or gender. Right. But if you do happen to be white and male and part of the LGBT community, you're still a white male.
Yep.
That's all right.
Still how that works.
Don't have to have a separate white male heterosexuals, white males other.
So it's right. White males other.
So, I don't know. That's silly. Oh my goodness.
So anyway, that's just so people know when you're looking at that graph, you need to keep that in mind. But the point is this graph conveys the following. Okay.
But you know what's cool in a lot of these races? It's a woman running against a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's not male versus female in some cases.
And this is unusual.
It really starts to be ideas. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you can't, I don't want no woman. Well, I got to vote for a woman.
Yeah.
I got to vote
There's
for a woman.
only women running.
Yeah.
So it's got to choose. Right.
Going to force some of them to actually do something.
Yeah. They actually said it the other day, and I don't remember what the stat was, but they said, we're guaranteed to add this many women to Congress because there's this many places where it's only women against women.
I got you.
You know, where there isn't a guy running. So obviously a guy can't win.
So some positive can come out of this no matter what.
Well, maybe, right? I mean, I suppose it depends on what you think of their policies, which is what it should come down to anyway.
That is true. Good point.
The point that the graph gets at here, or the chart rather, is the diversity problem the GOP faces. So over half of the Democratic candidates this year are not straight white men, while about 75% of the GOP candidates are straight white men. Now, this is not to say, okay, that straight white men running are, death to your party. That's
bad people.
Right. That's not what we're suggesting at all.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
For those people who don't know, Lance and I are both white men.
Yep.
So we're not suggesting, okay, that white men are evil or that they are going to be the ones that are the undermining. The point is they are not the majority of the country anymore. In fact, I just looked at this the other day. They make up a little over 30% of the total population. Straight white men, okay? They're not the majority. The reality is our political parties are going to continue to become more representative of the demographics in this country. That's what's going to happen in the long term, regardless of whether or not the Republicans get on board with that or not. And so if they don't, what will happen is they'll just keep losing little bits every year, a seat here, a seat there, as certain districts become more diverse. And it's not because everybody else hates the straight white man. I think there is a little bit of that going on right now, but that's not the main reason. The main reason is going to be,
and you shouldn't, because that's just as bad as disliking somebody because they come from a group different than you.
One of the minorities.
So you really shouldn't be a hater on people like me.
Yep.
Old white men.
It's just
because you're putting me in a box.
Right.
Well, you're an old white man. You must think like this. Mm-hmm. That's just as unfair as some old white men who think things about other people who are different from them. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't do that. That's just as bad.
Yep.
Sorry, I've talked to a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
Well, I like everybody. I just don't like old white men. I said, then you're just as bad as the old white men that you don't like, because you're generalizing about someone instead of finding out what they truly believe and think and act.
Mm-hmm. You've made a decision about them before you've talked to them. So so my point here is, what does it mean for the Republicans to get on board? What I mean by this is, it has become, and there's a winner and a loser in this, okay? The parties have become, the Democrats are the party of diversity and the love of women and everybody's okay, and the hippie and that's what they are. They're the everybody and anybody, as long as you're not a white dude, right? Or if you're a white dude, you need to be a young white dude who's preferably gay. That'd be best, that's...
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. And so you have that, right? And then the counter to that is you have the Republicans who are, and on the Democrat side, we're educated and we know things and we're smart and everybody else is stupid. And, all those weird people that want to live outside of cities and don't want to drown in the next 20 years on the coast, they're all nuts. They're weirdos, bunch of redneck, crazy yahoos. I couldn't think of a better word. And then on the flip side, right, you have the opposite of that, which is all those liberals think they're all so smart and we know what's best for us and for America. And we go to church and we hunt and we fish and gosh darn it, America, we'll wear the flag on our freaking biker jacket and then that'll be cool and all right. And then
right.
And we're the white Christians. That's who we are, by God, darn it. Or by gosh, excuse me.
Yep.
And that doesn't work.
That's who started this country.
Yeah.
No, you want to go back and read who the signers were of the Declaration of Independence and what their religious beliefs were? Oh, man, going to mess up the history, people.
They weren't a particular moral character, many of them.
Boy, no, they weren't. Or even religious.
Nope. Well, that's what I mean. There's some of them who they don't register on the moral or the religious scale, either perspective.
But they were open-minded enough to say, you know what? Let's try to start a place where we're going to be accepting of everyone. I mean, seriously now, take that from the historian perspective here.
Yeah.
Now, I understand, I'm here now. Well, they didn't give women the right to vote. Well, they promoted, they didn't get rid of slavery.
Yep.
Okay, folks, but I mean, but for the time, what they were willing to open up, I mean, still today, how many places are there out there that don't let different religions in? And what have we done? Don't let
women drive or whatever.
And what have we done? We've tried to take care of some of that, with the different amendments and the voting rights. But still, in the beginning, we made it more open than any place else in the world and have continued to go that direction, even though now we're not as open as some other places. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's my wrap up point there is that's the problem that we face is that the Democrats and the Republicans have become the party of identities instead of the parties of big government versus small government and the respective pros and cons that go with those. I'm not saying one's better than it. I'm just saying that's what it's become. It's not about the policies anymore. Now you got the Republican debt hungry Republicans. I mean, what? It's bonkers. What is going on? And you got Democrats saying we got to rein in spending. I mean, holy crap. I don't know if the world's not upside down. I don't know what's going on. It's crazy. So that's the point here is it's got to quit being the parties of identities. It's got to become the parties of policies, which I know is just a radical idea, but that's what was the original thinking, right, Lance, is we're all in the same group because we all think the same policy.
Right.
Policy, not because we all look the same.
Yep.
Which is...
Or came from a certain part of the country or whatever.
Yeah.
We had the same belief system.
Aside from, if there's a party that's going to try to champion the whole we're for diversity and inclusion, the Republicans could do that so easily. They have a history to fall back on of Republican presidents who signed these things. Again, different kinds of Republicans, but they could fall back on that if they weren't so caught up in this.
I want to keep power any way I can.
Yes. Nobody's thinking about, in the Republican Party, the long-term health here. They're all thinking about, well, I'll be out before that. So, and I'm an old white dude. So I don't want to think about the long-term health of the party, which is dumb.
Not to reopen the can of worms of the Kavanaugh hearing, but how many old white dudes represented the Republican Party on that committee? I mean, you look at a problem.
Yep.
I mean, irregardless of the Kavanaugh situation, daggone, I didn't realize Orrin Hatch is in his 80s and, Grassley those guys are all like, are you kidding me? I mean, but those guys were old when
right.
And in the Senate, when I was coming of age, I guess I've gotten older, so I guess they should have too. But it's like I see those names and I'm like, well, those were some of the middle of the road thinkers back when I was, the Reagan Republicans and stuff. Not anymore.
Not anymore. Nope. And that's the point here. Again, is they're the
Strom Thurmonds of the world.
It isn't that you have to be anti or for all the, races and diversity and inclusion. It just has to be, you got to be reflective of America. Because if you're not going to stay in power. It's just how it goes. When the majority of the country looks and talks and thinks differently, you can't keep looking and talking and thinking like you're the 10%, because that's what it's eventually going to be. And it's not to say there isn't a place for them again, but it's to say that if there's, 100 senators and 80 of them are old white men and white men only make up 30% of the country, something is unbalanced here, right? And eventually, whether or not you like it, whether or not you're comfortable with it, it's going to change. And your party's either going to be part of the change and maintain power, or it's not. And that's the choice they face. So long-term, short-term, Republicans, Democrats, final words, Lance. What do you got?
You're good.
Yeah?
No, my last words are go vote tomorrow.
Okay.
Or today, if you're listening to it on Tuesday.
Yep.
And if you're listening to it after that, I hope you voted.
Yes.
So there you go. That's my final word. Go vote. Be a part of this.
Yep.
Take accountability and participate. Don't sit on the sidelines and grovel and complain. Get out there and participate.
Yep.
And
if you're going to sit on the sidelines, then don't have anything to say once it's over.
Unfortunately, I don't even like that though. Yeah. People don't even do that.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to work. I'm raising my kids. So I don't even bother to vote. Whatever happens, I don't care.
Yeah. And they do, though. That's the thing. Everybody,
I don't know.
But there becomes something throughout there, like the Kavanaugh hearing, right? Where they talked about viewership so high right now because all these people tuned in. There are things that you do care about, even if you can't think about it right now.
Yeah.
Take a little time and energy to think about, okay, great. You just want to raise your family and have kids. Well, what's important to that? Because chances are at some point, the stuff's going to hit the fan and you're going to have to make a decision about how you feel about something that affects you at some point. And so if you're going to complain at some point, it would be a good idea to have at least been able to say, I had a say in how we got here. So I hope so. Join Lance and I Wednesday. Obviously, we'll be talking about everything that happens Tuesday. You don't even have to stay up late, You just go to bed, wake up nice and early, and we'll be ready to talk to you about what now? What's it mean, right?
That's right.
No point in talking about that ahead of time because we just don't know yet. So where can people listen, Lance?
Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere Apple Podcasts are sold.
Well, it's close. I thought we were going to go on a roll there.
Nope.
Right? Apple, Stitcher. On Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere that fine podcasts are found.
Oh, okay. Thought it was fine Apple Podcasts.
No. Nope.
I was closer.
We're close.
All right.
Got the mission, though, right?
I was closer.
That's right. I'll get you another candy before you leave. Okay. Go vote.
I really tried.
I know.
I really
you were
tried.
close. Almost had a perfect episode, I tell you. We'll see. Maybe Wednesday. Depends. I suppose it depends on how tomorrow goes. How Wednesday will be.
Is anything happening tomorrow?
What's that? Tomorrow? Yeah. An election, I think.
Oh, that's right. We don't have a show.
No. Wednesday. Sorry.
That's my calendars around the show.
Yeah? Okay. When's the next show? Got it. Okay, well, thank you all for tuning in for the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana. I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
We'll see you on Wednesday. Go vote.